Welcome to the Fredericksburg Center for the Creative Arts, Fcca, September 2022, Spaces and Places National Juried Exhibition. The Frederick Gallery and Members Gallery are both open on Monday from noon to 4, Thursday and Friday, noon to 4, Saturday, 11 to 4, and Sundays, 1 to 4. We welcome you to come in person at the historic Silversmith House, located at 813 Sophia Street in downtown Fredericksburg, Virginia. Thanks to our videographer, David Kennedy, for providing these wonderful videotapes of our juror talks and awards. The videotapes are posted as soon as possible near the first Friday of each month. During September, the Fcca Members Gallery has an exhibition featuring the Northern Neck artists Connie Canby, Del Ford, Steve Griffin, Celeste Johnston, Janice Jones, Ann McCahill, and Wendy Young. You're invited to visit our exhibitions in person and to enjoy the original art in our historic home where art and history meet. I would like to introduce to you the juror of the Spaces and Places exhibition, Joseph DeBella, Distinguished Professor Emeritus of Art, who taught at the University of Mary Washington in Fredericksburg, Virginia, from 1977 to 2016. He served as Chief of the Department of Art and Art History from 1990 to 1993 and 1996 to 1999, and Director of University Galleries from 1983 to 1988. Instrumental in the establishment of the gallery program and the Ritter Hoff Martin Gallery at Mary Washington, he was Director of University Galleries from 1983 to 1988, and interim director in 1989 and 97 to 98. He was co-director of the university's program in Urbino, Italy from 1994 to 2003. Joseph holds a BA in art history from Rutgers and MA and MFA degrees in painting from Northern Illinois University. A signature member of the National Watercolor Society and affiliated with other professional art organizations. He has exhibited in regional, national, and international venues. I want to thank Joseph for coming back, as we always welcome him, to the Fcca as our distinguished juror, and for his selection of this wonderful exhibit and his awards. Joe?
Thank you, Carol, for that introduction. It's always a great pleasure to be at Fcca. It's my home, been here for a number of years, and it's like family being here. And it's always a challenge and a pleasure to see work at Fcca, to judge the work, and to acknowledge some of the fine efforts that local and regional and national artists do in their exhibitions here at Fcca. So this exhibit is entitled Spaces and Places. Immediately, the two words, spaces and places, induce listeners and viewers to thoughts and recollections of both physical and mental abodes that we have occupied, with which we may have some familiarity, or that may be imaginary. A space can be a dimensional containment surrounding us in which our senses exact their curiosity or assist us in movement through it. It can be volumetric space in which we discern physical entities and configurations and shapes, or it can be flat space in which these configurations exist laterally in relation to each other. However, we can often be deceived by what we think we see, assuming that something is at a particular position and distance from another thing. So, space can be ambiguous. Then there is existential space, that unconstrained inner field of thought that gives form and presence to the inchoate memory clips of our past, or conjure imaginary conceptions lurking in the subconscious. Space, then, is both outer and inner experience, as it is with place. We think of place as a location, sometimes like home or hometown or state or country, where we can go or where we may have been. How often do we say that in troubling times we go to our happy place. And that can be physically real or mentally constructed. Places too are inner and outer, and can likewise be caught somewhere between and be ambiguous. Think of a reflection, for instance. Is that space real, or does it only appear real? Does it assure or confound our perception of reality? So, when I reviewed the entries for this particular exhibit, I had these ideas and offshoots in mind. How do artists conceive of space and place? And how do artists give visual form to these ideas? And by what means materially and technically do artists convey the form and idea of space and place? Given that there are numerous ways of achieving these ends, whether it be representational, abstract, solely image-based, or including signs or words connoting some aspect of space or place, I had to assess each work by these criteria: conceptual, formal, and technical, and then determine the level of resonance in me, the juror, who is an artist and a constant art viewer, in my response to the artist's particular insight and voice. I want to emphasize something to all the artists who submitted work for this exhibit, whether or not the works were selected or if they received awards. That is, what you do is creative work, and that you must continue to exercise your need to work. My judgments about the submissions were based on my own insights, experiences, and familiarity with art making and life in general that impel me and others to make and look at art. Am I biased? Now tell me, who isn't? Can I say that my selection process is purely objective? No. Can I say that my selection process is purely subjective? No to that too. If I can attempt a succinct description of how I engage in the selection process, it would be this. I immediately respond to a work. Then I ask myself why I responded the way I did. That is, I probe my reaction to understand what I perceive as the possible premise, concept, or genre, and with that, its structural organization or composition, and with that, the means by which the work was physically actualized, its material and technical elements. So, while there is certainly some kind of objectivity involved in breaking down these aspects of the work, how I respond to them is not purely objective. Art is not always about unbiased factuality, and what is for that matter. Much of art deals with personal interpretation, emotion, and discovery. With these things in mind, let me comment on a few specific works and announce the honorable mentions and placed winners. This is a work by Maria Benke entitled A Slice of 22. The everyday experience as food on the table and its metaphoric equivalent of a slice of the pie or a slice of life might strike us as a common domestic situation that speaks about assured acquisition of something desired and valuable. And there is this dialogue between the hand and the pie. The dialogue might go like this: "It is such a small piece, don't you think?" Or, "Is this about how much was taken?" And the cake-covered knife near earbuds and a tube of toothpaste? There is disruption of expectation here, making what is initially a recognizable situation into an unsettling one. Perhaps this is a metaphor for a premonition or assessment of the current year. Certainly, what many have endured over the COVID pandemic hasn't been a piece of cake. The elimination of chromatic color further distanced the perception of the situation as having to do primarily with the olfactory pleasure of eating. For these reasons, I selected this work for an honorable mention. This work is entitled Frozen Future by Kevin Wincello. The elimination of nuanced detail to a statement of reductive tonal shapes compresses the space of this image through abstraction, although the imagery is still nameable. The abstraction of this common family scene, perhaps on a boardwalk in a beach town, while offering recognizable imagery, simultaneously distances the situation and thus creates an evocation of past space and place. Nostalgia emerges as another means of addressing the theme. For these reasons, and for also the unexpected element of seeing this family of 3 and 4 ice cream desserts in front of them, who's the missing character? Perhaps it's a reference to the viewer. But it's that mystery that I find to be so compelling about this particular work. And for that reason, I awarded this piece an honorable mention. This work is by Bob Worthy, entitled Blue Ridge. Here's an example of the artist throwing off the drawer. I am familiar with the look of many of Bob Worthy's art pieces, but I did not immediately conclude that this or his other one in this exhibit was his work. Good job, Bob. I want to look at art with fresh eyes. By that I mean I want to meet a work of art for the first time as I would meet a person for the first time, with a given amount of experience in how to greet and react to a new contact. I do this with my own art. Sometimes after working long on a piece, I will put it aside for a period of time, only to retrieve it later, and then I see its prospects and weaknesses more clearly. This worthy work conveys the distillation of many of the artist's earlier landscape-inspired works with its division of upper, middle, and lower. The details of flora and clouds are eliminated, but still referenced. Note the texture of the upper section. The brush marks run horizontally, alluding to the passage of clouds. The lower section's brush marks run vertically, a response perhaps to the erosion of the land. The middle section combines horizontal and vertical with some micro areas slipping into the upper and lower regions, like the growth of trees. This is a nuanced work, stripped of much of the descriptive elements of the natural landscape to create what I would call a metascape, beyond the physical perception of landscape. It is an idea of landscape. For these reasons, I selected this work for an honorable mention. This work by Teresa Blatt is entitled Monk's Cell. Space and place, both as experiences and as concepts, are intertwined in this work. The common idea about the monastic life is that it requires a black and white lifestyle. That is, labor and prayer, conviction and devotion, action and rest, day and night. But, as with all human beings, there is this stuff between that is not so easily distinguished. So it is with the play of pictorial space. We think of objects and then background, but in pictorial art there is positive and negative space, occupied versus unoccupied space. In the manipulation of these spaces, one space status begins to assume the discreteness of the other, and the result is ambiguity. Or the outer impinges on the inner, and vice versa. Not a blur, but a distinction of one becomes another. For these reasons, I selected this work for an honorable mention. Elizabeth Shoemate did this work entitled My Backyard. In some works, the artist distills visual information into a reductive visual statement. But here the artist maximizes the picture plane, filling it with interconnected vignettes of spatial motifs within a space, in this case the artist's garden, and collects them as one does a bouquet. It is a compendium of various views of the garden, with the artist having picked and arranged them. Or it is like the way dreams combine snippets of things we have experienced. But notice that this is not merely a visual listing of views. Rather, these transitions, one into the other, are a means of connecting these diverse elements. The garden experience as life itself is not simply a series of discrete entities. It is an immersion of visual, tactile, and olfactory stimulations in a space. The composition is particularly satisfying in the manner it layers and juxtaposes. For these reasons, I selected this work to receive the third place award. This work by Barbara Taylor Hall is entitled Ebb and Flow 2. To prove the point that I do not try to determine who the artist is in order to select a work for an exhibit, I think I am fairly familiar with Barbara Taylor Hall's established style and interpretation, but I did not know this was her work when I first saw it. The departure from her signature style is, of course, derived from many of the idiomatic elements of her previous work. And that is critical because an artist is always transforming and refining her voice. This work is a sequence of related images that suggest the beach, but do not illustrate the subject. Rather, the abstract elements allude not only to aspects of the seashore as place, but also as purely rhythmic statements, swathed in atmospheric and watery folds. A single one-frame image would describe the beach as fixed space and place. But this is a stacked sequence, and it's more effective because it addresses time as it changes as space and place. The image refers to the flow of time, even as we stand and ponder the expanse condensed on a small scale. For these reasons, I selected this work to receive the second place award. Event on the James by Susan Garnett. Place as landscape here is a confluence of both natural and human-made structures, with the natural landscape disrupted by the urban elements. But this is not the only kind of spatial disruption in this work. You know, sometimes people want art to be a soothing ointment, an aesthetic anesthetic to carry them away from much of the troubles of life, something to contemplate in a passive way, something that will coordinate well with the decor. That is not such a bad thing. It is a good thing to live with lovely art. But one of the roles of art is to mirror all aspects of life, and some of those aspects aren't all contemplative and pretty. Some are odd and jarring, even in the most common places and spaces of leisure and the unexpected may occur. Something that seems out of order or even threatening. This is the case in this challenging piece. Challenging in scale, technical handling, and image. The work is so effective because its scale convincingly draws the viewer into the scene. One can sense the heat of summer. It permeates. What is a relief? Sunbathing on the bank and kayaking in the river. Who cares? And strolling on the comparatively thin suspended pedestrian walkway under the massive concrete vehicular overpass. Space can be over and under. Suspended from the bridge are huge banners. Are they purely decorative? My question is, did the artist see these in situ and record them as such? Or are they reiterations of the rocks, grass, and high-massed light in other parts of the landscape? If so, then, in this case, the picture becomes self-referential space. The scene evokes a sleepy summer evening at dusk, and just when you think you're nestled in a safe place, you realize that one among the kayakers is an anomaly. A figure in what appears to be a boat with a horse's head. Is it a toy boat? Is it a Viking boat? Or is it a demoted Civil War equestrian sculpture? The figure and its vessel stand apart from the other boaters. They are devoid of both the color and lighting effects common to the others in the river. And those others appear startled by what they see. It is as though this is an apparition from an entirely different time, but a related space. This painting coerces the viewer into unresolved dialogues about manifestations of space and place and their relationship to time. Among these manifestations, some are definitive, some are suggestive, and some are totally ambiguous. For these reasons, I selected this work to receive the first place award.
Thank you for visiting the Fredericksburg Center for Creative Arts and its September Spaces and Places exhibition. With thank you to Joseph DeBella for the wonderful job of selecting this exhibit and awards. Keep watching for a walkthrough of the entire exhibit, including all the artwork on display. Be sure to come in person and visit the Fcca at 813 Sophia Street.
the Fredericksburg Center for the Creative Arts, where art and history meet.